Hi, welcome to our episode on the book When Mimi Went Missing. And I'm Suresh, and I'm here with Suja Sukumar. She's the author of When Mimi Went Missing. She has many hats she wears, but she's also my wife, so that's full disclosure. Uh, I think the journey she's been through, it started many years ago, and when she first started writing. But the book launched on November 19th of last year. So let's get to it and see. Some really big news came out in the last couple of weeks. So let's talk about that first. The Anthony Award nomination for the book, and so there you go.
Yeah, so the Anthony Award is actually, it's one of the awards given at the Bauschakon conference, and it's a mystery conference, and it's done once a year. So it's given to the best mystery book in any specific genre. So I was pretty fortunate, and my book got nominated for the best YA/children's book for the year, for 2025. So I was quite surprised to get that nomination. Really happy, but I got the nomination. I found out about it while I was at work, so it was really thrilling to find about to know that the book got nominated. So now the conference is going to happen later this year in September in New Orleans, and so we're planning on going for that. And it's one out of five best YA/children's book, for the year of 2025.
So what other awards are there? Actually, what I heard of, what's a few other awards that in the same category.
Oh yeah, you mean like during for that specific conference? Or?
No, the other conferences like Thriller Fest.
Oh yeah, so there's another one coming up. We're going for that actually next month in June, and that's the International Thriller Awards. So there are a few other. So there's the Agatha Awards, which is again for best mystery in a specific genre. The Anthony Award, which my book got nominated for, and then there's the International Thriller Awards too, and that's in June in New York. And then there are a couple others like the children's book, so the Organization for Children's Books, they have their own nomination as well.
So, so that's fantastic, right? This was amazing news that she got a couple of weeks ago, and we're just excited that her debut book got nominated, and the rest is just icing on the cake. So let's go back to your journey since the book launched on November 19th. I know we had a launch event in Royal Oak here in Michigan at a bookstore, but we've had many other events since then. It's been 6 months since the book came out, and many books have been bought by libraries and bookstores. We visited many bookstores ourselves, starting with DC to Boston to locally here. So I'll let Suja talk about, what all we did since the launch day and, so.
Yeah, so the launch was on the day of the book release, and that was November 19th. And that was in Royal Oak, in a small in an indie bookstore called Sidetrack. It was pretty well attended, and we had talked about it in a previous episode. But the next day there was another event in Coriander, which is another indie bookstore like locally in Grosse Pointe here. And there's been a couple since. We had one in DC. We had another book event in Boston, and they've all been pretty well attended. So I was lucky that way. Getting book events right around your launch time is pretty important because there's a lot of hype when a new book comes out. People are interested in it, and that's how you get the word out. So it would involve calling bookstores. I also got a book signing in Barnes and Nobles, and that was in Virginia, yes, in Arlington.
Arlington, yeah.
And I also reached out to a few other Barnes and Nobles, and they stocked the book for me. So they got in like a few books, and I went in there and signed the books. And then we had gone down to Fort Lauderdale in Florida, and that was earlier this year in March. And the Barnes and Nobles in Fort Lauderdale actually ordered 10 of my books. So that was really nice of them, and I signed those books as well. So the book events have been good, have been really good. Multiple events. There was an event here in our library. We set up an author panel, and there were two other authors who came in, one adult author and two children's authors, me and another author, and we all wrote in different genres. I was a thriller writer, the other one was a romance, contemporary, and the other one was a fantasy, sci-fi. And that event was very well attended to, so a lot of people came to listen to us, talk about publishing in general and how to get a book deal. And there's been a few book events like that, and then there's been book festivals. The book festivals are different. You got to get invited to one. You can ask yourself, or your publisher can ask for you and see if they'll invite you to a book festival. And if you get invited, it's a pretty big deal because they host you. They provide everything you need. They provide a venue. You have a table, and the attendees come in, to talk to the book authors. So the one we went to was in Hudson in New York. It was a children's book festival, and it was a very good experience. That was my first book festival, and I'll never forget that. So that was a really good experience for me. I liked it. And then there are conferences like the one I'm going to in New Orleans. We're going to New Orleans for the for the nomination for the Anthony Award. That's the conference.
So, I mean, the thing is, I think what people forget is writing a book is one thing, but promoting, marketing, and the rest of the thing that you need to do is a whole lot more. I think writing is an important, difficult part, but the rest of the part is maybe even more difficult for writers because it's just so much of marketing, so much of events, so many places you have to show your face, you have to be there, you have to represent your book. So I think that's something that people will have to keep working on, and many people probably don't appreciate how much work goes into it.
Yeah,
so
that's true. So I mean, even like Suresh said, even if my book is traditionally published, meaning I have an agent who sold the book to a publisher, and the publisher bought the book, so they gave me an advance for that, and then once you earn out your advance, you get your royalties. But even if it is a traditionally published book and you get a book deal for it, they do put a certain amount of marketing and definitely a lot of publicity, especially to libraries, because that's something an author cannot do on their own. That type of marketing has to be done by the publisher to the libraries. But reaching out to book stores, especially indie bookstores, can be is often something an author has to put a lot of work into.
And I think one of the things you probably forgot in all of this is your book has been picked by the Detroit Public Libraries. So
yeah,
school, right?
The school. So that was a really good news to hear as well. I had actually did reach out to the Detroit Public Schools. They have a community, literary community actually, and they were looking for local authors. And so I dropped off my book and they reviewed the book, and then they recently sent me an email saying that my book has been selected for their local author panel for the Detroit Public Schools. So that's actually huge, pretty huge for me, because my book specifically represents the Indian American community. The main characters are Indian American, and they are they're supposed to be from a fictional town, but in the Metro Detroit area. So that representation is pretty important for me, and I'm really happy that the Detroit Public Schools picked the book.
And I think one of the things that came out of this book is that the book addresses bullying in schools, and a lot of schools and librarians seem to have caught on to that concept, and maybe not a lot of books address bullying. And even though the main character is Indian American, the concept of bullying, it applies to all kids.
Yeah.
All kids who are either diverse, not included in situations in schools, and being picked on. So I think that addressed maybe that's the attraction for a lot of the school librarians.
Yeah.
Along with being it's a unique book.
So the libraries actually do tag the books with certain tags, and this book did get tagged for being anti-bullying. teaching characters how, certain kids how to break through that sort of intimidation. So I think that was a big appeal for libraries, and that's probably why a large part of the initial sale of the book was to libraries, and quite a few of the libraries have picked up the book.
So talking about sales, I know we can't, we don't have exact numbers. The publisher gives out every 6 months. They give numbers for how the book is doing, and even then, some of the information is not fully there. But you got some numbers from the first month and a half, and it came out in May. So if you want to just generally say how your book is doing in terms of
Yeah,
the libraries and
yeah.
bookstores and things like that.
So every publisher gives out royalty statements, and it's usually done, twice a year. Sometimes it's 4 times a year. Every 3 months, it's every 4 months, or sometimes it's every 6 months. My publisher gives out royalty statements every 6 months. So the royalty statement which I just recently got was my first statement, and that was actually only for the 6 weeks of last year. The book came out November 19th. So all the sales from November 19th through December 31st of last year was reflected in that statement. And looking at that, so that's only been 6 weeks. So for that 6 weeks, I really think it did do very well based on the numbers I've seen. It did sell, like I said, a lot to libraries. So a thing about book sales is also, when you sell to libraries, those books typically don't get returned by the libraries keep the books. So if you have a book which applies to schools or to kids or even to adults, a lot of adults like the book because of the mystery, the thriller theme, the concept. I've seen a lot of people approach me and tell me that they really found the book riveting, that it was a page turner. So that, and the theme of the book appealed to them. So when you make a large chunk or percentage of your sales to libraries, they keep the book, they don't return them. So this book, a lot of it was to libraries. And then the bookstores, there's been quite a big percentage was to bookstores too. They may return it, it's possible. But even with that, I think so far the book seems to be doing really well.
So that we can't complain. I think the books apparently they did a second version of printing the book, and I think we want to thank everybody who our friends and family who bought the books, and here in the U.S., in India, and other places, because I think you guys have done a wonderful job of supporting her, in this thing. And I think the good thing is we are still enjoying the book and the journey the book is going through in terms of conferences and when Mimi went missing.
Sorry, it's upset. Huh?
Yeah, when Mimi went missing, and because of the book, and we're traveling to different conferences, book festivals. It's been an eye opener for me because I'm just watching all these authors and writers do their thing. And a funny thing, we were in New York for Hudson Book Festival. I ran into a couple of other husbands who are supporting their wives who are authors, So we were just making, funny jokes about what do we need to do to support them. And, maybe there's some best practices for doing this. So anyway, before we move on to the final topic, which is what is Suja going to write next in her next book? I know she's already finished her part of the initial draft and submitted to the agent and the publisher. So I think if you want to talk a little bit about the book and whatever you can talk about. So.
Yeah. So my second book. So when I signed the book deal, for when Mimi went missing, they always the way you sign a deal is they have the rights to your second book as well. So once I finished my second book and I've turned it into my publisher already, they have an exclusive period which is usually for a month, where they have the initial rights to the book, and if they don't want it or if they haven't read it as yet, then it can be sent out widely. But this book is a horror book, so it basically has a horror theme, and it is also a young adult book, and it's about an IndianAmerican kid, a 17-year-old kid who goes back to Kerala, which is the southern state in India, she goes back there because she's going to meet her grandmother for the first time, and while she's there, she finds her ancestral home is haunted by yakshi. So yakshis are, people in Kerala know this concept of yakshis, but it's basically, if you talk it in American terms, it would be a vampire. She meets this yakshi, which is supposedly the spirit of a girl, an 18-year-old girl who was killed in that house, and supposedly by the main character's mother. So now she has to clear her mom's name and also save her family from this yakshi before they all get killed. So
that's the nutshell of the book.
Yeah, that's a nutshell of the book. That's the basic theme of the book.
We still have a long ways to go because the publisher will probably have to go through it.
Yeah,
and
so
then decide if they want to offer on it.
Yeah, so
and then it takes for some time before you go through all the editings.
Yeah, well, basically, if my publisher, the current one offers on it, then then I'll start editing with my editor, who's the editor for this book. It'll most likely be the same editor, and I'll work with her, and she's excellent. So I'll work with her, and it'll be 2 years from the day you sign your contract before the book comes out.
All right. All I know is I'm not going to be reading the book because I'm not into horror. So
yeah, he doesn't watch horror movies.
So it has to. I'll support everything, but I'm not going to read the book per se when it comes out. So she knows that.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. Yeah. When I have trouble watching horror movies, so it's probably going to be hard.
Yeah.
I love thrillers, so if this book turns out into a movie, we'll both be watching it for sure. But the horror, I'm not certain.
No, there are people who love horror, so it's not. It's a group of people who love horror movies, and they will always love the horror movies.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
I think it's just.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, I think this pretty much wraps up what we had to say today.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening. And you have anything else to say?
No, I'm really grateful for my readers because now I've had so many people, like I said, come up to me and tell me that they love the book, and they keep asking when my second book is going to come out. So, and that's why the second book is easier, because you already have an audience of people who loved your first book and they want to read something from you again. This is a new thing for me. It's a new field for me. It's something I started pretty late. Started writing in my mid-40s. So, but it's something I'm totally enjoying. So I'm really, really grateful that I have this chance to write.
So with that, let's stop here and thank you for listening. And hopefully we'll bring you more updates in the future about how the book is going, the next book, etc., etc.
And thank you to him.